Build Proposition Lab at DP Summit 2024. It's been a long 2 days and we did tons of interviews, but if you stuck until the end, you will get one of the best ones. And it's my pleasure and my honor to host Brian Houck from Microsoft, one of the authors of the Space Framework. And we're going to talk about it a lot. But basically, for all of you who don't know, Space Framework is the framework that directly impacts developer productivity because it's the Developer Productivity Engineering Summit, and it's very exciting, really. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
And Brian, you were with Microsoft for many years, and basically you are one of the people who transformed the organization from Microsoft we all don't want to remember to Microsoft that we are now don't hate.
Yeah, I've been at Microsoft for over 18 years, and it's been incredibly interesting and rewarding to be part of the journey where, I think a long time ago, we thought of developer productivity as just a way to squeeze more business value out of all of our engineers. And now we recognize that taking a human-centric approach to developer productivity is not only good for people, but it is also good for the business.
Yes, and I would say in one word, if I think about transformation of Microsoft, this is it. From like a cold business machine to something much more humane. And this is so weird to even speak in those terms when we talk about business, when we talk about very successful and getting more successful every year, that it's a lot of it is because of the opposite of what you say, like the common industrial revolution capitalistic approach would be, which is the opposite of humane. So how does it work?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it all starts with research and data and insights, and looking at how impacting the human experience and how developers as humans work and operate. You can find through data, through rigorous research, that investing in people leads to better business outcomes. It is actually good for the business and good for the people.
Boom. No, seriously, I mean, that's huge, and it's huge for all of us, right? It's huge for, obviously, the businesses to actually know that this is where they should invest. And it's huge for us as employees because suddenly, what we always wanted, the way we always wanted to be treated is also good for the bottom line. This is great. Speaking about research, let's speak about research. So space, the framework in five words, what is it?
So satisfaction, performance, activity, collaboration, efficiency. Space is a set of dimensions whose central theme is really that productivity is not one thing. You will never boil it down to one single dimension that you can put on a scorecard, or one single metric, rather, you can put on a scorecard. Productivity is many things. It spans many dimensions. And so as you look for how to make your organizations more productive, you can't measure it in just one way. You have to look at not only how much work is happening, but how collaboratively it's happening, how efficiently it's happening. Are people thriving as they are doing work? Do they find their work meaningful? And space is, unlike some other things like DORA, is not a prescriptive set of metrics. It really is a framework for how to think about developer productivity.
So, and I think the bottom line is you think about it as a multifaceted discipline, right?
Yes.
So there are some of hard metrics, but there are also a lot of, and this is something and I'm very excited about that. Throughout the interviews on those 2 days, it came again and again like, hey, you need to talk to people. You need to ask what's really going on. Looking just at numbers won't cut it. And this is very exciting because suddenly it's like this part of soft skills and empathy and understanding that was rarely there when it came to like efficiency and this kind of stuff, like go do your job, write code, or whatever. Yep. Right? So this is extraordinary. But here's an interesting twist on it, and it comes from our like Gradle view on developer productivity, and that's the E in the end, right? So it's developer productivity engineering. And what we say by that, it's not like that there are no other aspects, like, hey, having a good working environment is not important. But it's also, let's see how can we engineer developer productivity better throughout all the aspects. And I wonder, and this is something that I gave personally a lot of thought in the last year, how those two relate, how space relates to developer productivity engineering. How can we engineer better results in our space research?
Yeah, great question. I think of space as providing the lens, providing the language with which we can evaluate and even think about our engineering investments. And so as we look at things like, as an example, increasing like build efficiency, space gives us the way in which we can evaluate if we are successful and the impact it is having. And so you can see, as builds get faster, as builds get more reliable, devs are able to work more efficiently. As they work more efficiently, we will see that they complete more work. They will actually be happier about it because they are less frustrated waiting around for some inefficient tool or process. And so space allows us to see, oh, improving this one engineering process actually yields positive benefits across lots of different dimensions.
So basically, even aspects which are measured through not only hard numbers, but also generally like how do you measure satisfaction, actually get improved if the underlying productivity is improved, including through engineering.
Yeah, it's a great question, a great thought. I think many of the dimensions relate to each other. Improving one will often improve. If you target improvements toward one, you will see improvements across lots of others. And the way that you drive improvement can both be through driving culture change, changes to the environment, changes to organizational structures, and engineering change. And you'll see that across, certainly satisfaction to efficiency, like, and everything in between.
Another very interesting aspect that I want to hear your opinion on how it collaborates with space, because it certainly does, is what Hans spoke about yesterday morning in his keynote, and that's toolchain observability. Right, so obviously and this is also very true for space, what we won't know what to improve if we didn't measure it first. And by measurement, as it is with space, it's not only cold numbers, but it's also all the aspects of measuring all those different aspects of space. Yeah. How does toolchain observability fit into this larger model of space measurements?
Yeah, it's a great question again, and I think it would be impossible for me to do my job if I did not have access to rich amounts of data. Data coming from our tools. I need to know how developers are actually working, where they are encountering pain points. And while I do think it is important to always start by talking to your developers, hear their pain points from them, it is impossible to scale that to every developer, and that is always going to be, surveys and things like that are always going to be a lagging indicator. And so what I like to be able to do is talk to developers, hear from them where their pain is, but then in order to scale that out, to be able to measure across all sorts of different circumstances, I need telemetry. In order to do that, I have to have instrumentation throughout my entire tool chain.
There is also the issue that sometimes the developers don't even know the problem that they have. And this is, again, one of the examples that Hans mentioned yesterday, when people are used to work in a certain way, and they are not proficient enough in the specific domain to realize that what they are doing is not efficient, not effective, not productive, just because it has always been that way, and they don't even know that there is a better way. So asking them won't give you much because they don't know what they don't know.
It's such a great observation, and we can see this in the data. We can see that new hire developers as an example, are 30% more likely to say that their software tools are insufficient, even if they're using the exact same tool chain than senior developers. And it's not because senior developers like their tools better. It's after a while, they just get used to them and they forget how painful it used to be because they no longer see that because they've already, adapted to the way things are.
Yeah, and one of the examples I have to show my T-shirt, sponsored by Trisha G. There you go. This is a great example of such a problem because for a lot of developers, flaky tests is just a given, right? Okay, so we run this build twice because sometimes it fails, and you know what? We automated it. Yep. Now it runs twice automatically, and we're fine. We solved the problem where actually they really didn't, and they didn't know that there is a better way.
Yeah. In fact, oftentimes you don't even see that you're running the test twice because it just becomes muscle memory. You sort of do it almost instinctively. And so when someone asks, what are your top pain points? You don't think of it because you're not even giving it conscious thought anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. So this is, it makes sense. And here is the question, because there is obviously the other side of that is, the biases that people have when you ask them questions, right? And it might very well be that if you ask one developer, they will be obsessed with flaky tests because they saw a video from Trisha and it opened their eyes, and now this is the biggest problem of their lives, that they need to run the build twice because it's wrong, yep. Right? But then you ask someone else and they have other concerns. For example, they work remotely and their internet is very slow, so their dependencies downloads tons of times, where the colleagues that work from office don't even notice because they're on super fast internet. So how do you deal with that when you do those surveys and when you speak with developers?
I mean, the way I deal with it is by mixed method research, is that I will blend, qualitative work, interviewing, talking with developers, with surveys, with telemetry analysis. I don't believe any one method standing alone can do it, because it's, obviously you have your own perspective, your own biases, but it's, there are things that you wouldn't even consider thinking about. And so an example I can give is we found at Microsoft that creating a pull request before 10 a.m. Decreases the amount of time it takes to flow through our system by 15%.
Wow.
Why? Because if you create a pull request before 10 a.m., that code review request happens before all of your peers are buried in meetings and email. That's not something that many developers would ever even think about evaluating. You can't use that. You can see that, if you ask developers, they'll say, well, I'm really upset that my pull request takes so long. But if you want to answer why, it was that deep data analysis that allowed us to do it. And I couldn't have done one without the other.
This is so cool. It reminds me of research of Professor Daniel Kahneman and other about behavioral psychology. There is a lot of that as well there as well. Now, this example is not particularly there. It just popped in my mind, and jumping between topics here. But I wonder what do you see in behavioral patterns of humans and this kind of stuff in your research, and how that can help?
So the my closing slide yesterday in my talk here at the DPE Summit was that no matter how complex our tools, every problem is a human problem. And sort of the example I gave to illustrate that is, as we look at developer adoption of AI tools, the way in which teams talk about those tools, the amount that your peers are using those tools, impact how much productivity gains you as an individual get out of them. And so we are constructs of our human environment around us, and we see it from something as technical as adoption of GitHub Copilot.
This is cool. So if your team and your colleagues are kind of skeptical about it, this thing doesn't work, then you will get less of it because this is what you hear around you.
You hear it around you, and then you are deprived of the opportunity from learning from people who have leaned in and are heavily invested in it.
And then happy about it and happy to share how it's better and how you can. Yep. Wow, this is amazing. I just had another. Yes, AI. Perfect segue. How AI can help with space, with developer productivity?
I think it's sort of the opposite relationship, is how does space help us improve our AI tools? Again, space is a language for how we evaluate the impact of something, and you can use it to evaluate the impact of a new team process or adoption of new tools like AI coding assistants. And so when I think about how do I want to maximize the impact from the adoption of AI tools, I evaluate it through the lens of space. I see, are devs happier when they are using it? Are they having better business outcomes? Are they able to work more efficiently? Are they doing more work? How is it impacting the way they collaborate with their peers, learn from each other? And so I view it from all those different dimensions. And if I see that the adoption of a certain tool may be helping in one place and hurting in another, well, that's an opportunity for feature investment.
Let me guess, mixed results.
So there certainly are mixed results, although in general, we see that when adopted well, when the environment, when your peers are leaning in, when you are learning what are the ways in which you can adopt AI tools, where does it help, where does it not help, it can actually help across all dimensions. But it really, again, depends on the human context around it.
This is fascinating. My question, the original question about AI was, and helping space was really, can you utilize any of that for the research?
Well, there's me as a researcher.
Yes.
I'm able to use AI tools. Absolutely. Like, I'm able to use AI to help me analyze data.
Yes.
I'm able to use, like any developer out there, if I need a new R script in order to do some analytics, and, using a correlation that I may not be as familiar with, I can use AI tools to help me in my job.
Can it predict interesting stuff when I analyze the results and find correlations that the PRs before 10 a.m. and this kind of stuff? Is there something that it can do smarter than we can do as human researchers in terms of coming up with those strategies of how to improve?
I have not found that to be the case yet.
Okay.
I think what AI lacks is that human experience.
Yeah.
And so it is sort of pretending what it means to be human, but is not a human. And so, predicting how, how the humans are going to react to certain situations, it is not great at that. It's also, I, in my experience, haven't found it to be able to replace sort of the creative work of coming up with those research questions to begin with. It's once I have that, it is a great tool to help me get through some of the more monotonous, repetitive kinds of tasks.
Yeah.
But the creative, deep thinking, I still have to be at the driver's seat.
Interesting. But I thinking about finding correlations and stuff. Maybe one day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what machine learning is in many cases.
Exactly.
And so it's useful for that if I am feeding in the questions.
Yeah. So, but analyzing results, probably there is something there.
It absolutely helps with analyzing.
Yeah, and maybe some insights that we miss, and it can find just because it crunches data better than we are.
Yeah, it absolutely can crunch data a lot faster than I can by hand with my abacus. But coming up with novel hypotheses that prove to be true, there it still seems to be struggling.
Well, that makes sense.
One day, maybe.
Maybe. One day, maybe we'll all be out of jobs. Or maybe not. Probably not.
Not today and not tomorrow.
Not today, not tomorrow. But the speed is increasing, so who knows?
You never know.
Yeah, who knows? Brian, that was a tremendous pleasure. Thank you very much. It was very interesting, very enlightening for those of you who hear about space for the first time. Give it give it a thought. It's a great tool to assess where you are and know where to move forward in developer productivity. Any limitations for space, it should be used only in the teams that are larger than, or companies that are larger than, or something like that?
So I think that space is appropriate no matter where you are in your journey, and whether you are an organization who is just starting out in your DPE journey or you are fairly mature. I think space, again, is a set of principles. I think the concern is not where is it or is it not useful. Again, it comes down to how you use it. And it is, I think, taking away the one thing I would like you to take away from it is that you should look at things from lots of different angles and not try to boil it down to a single metric. And I think that principle applies for everybody.
Brilliant. Brian, thank you very much. Folks, that you had it from Brian Houck. And stay tuned for more episodes of the Build Propulsion Lab at DP Summit 2024. Cheers. Have a great day. Bye-bye.